Iran currently is the only state on the planet that is providing material military support to Palestine, to resistance in all of the Arabic world mainly and Muslim world. I'm done with hearing any opinion of somebody from the West if they are not calling for armed struggle against their own genocidal imperialist regimes that have been rampaging across this planet since the beginnings of the Crusades. China today could buy all of Iran's oil and gas, all of it, and cut on its purchases from Saudi or Emirati oil and gas, or Qatari, which are enemies of Russia and China in general, collaborators, vassals of the West, but it's not doing that.
Hello, and welcome to Attrition. I'm your host, Ammar Kazmi, and in this show we delve into the forces of war, imperialism and Zionism, exploring their impact on our world and what it will take to overcome them. And we have a vital episode today discussing the US-Zionist assault on the Islamic Republic of Iran, which has been ongoing for around 3 weeks. But before we get into that, please make sure to like this video and to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. It helps me to keep bringing you content like this. To analyse the situation in Iran, I have the privilege of being joined by Laith Marouf. Laith is a veteran award-winning multimedia consultant, journalist and political commentator, and he's also the co-founder of Free Palestine TV. You can find them on freepalestine.video, where you can follow them and donate to their vital reporting from the field in Lebanon. Laith is Palestinian and Syrian by ethnicity, but based in Lebanon, and through his many years of reporting, Laith has developed an expertise on state security and hybrid warfare. But before I bring Laith in, it's important to set out some of the context. Protests within the Islamic Republic of Iran began at the end of December 2025, before being hijacked by violent agitators. These low-level protests originally centered around frustrations about inflation and the difficulties faced by the Iranian currency, and they were initially led by shopkeepers and traders facing economic hardship from global sanctions imposed by Western countries. However, these peaceful gatherings quickly turned into chaos after being hijacked by a cohort of Mossad agents and other foreign-backed agitators who began infiltrating the crowds to sow discord and violence using a variety of tactics and weapons. By the start of January 2026, riots had spread to numerous Iranian provinces. Foreign provocateurs began actively inciting clashes, attacking both government and civilian buildings, targeting individual security personnel, desecrating places of worship, setting fires, carrying out shootings, and engaging in other acts of wanton violence, all deliberately designed to provoke security forces into taking defensive measures. Those efforts have been openly assisted by US President Donald Trump, as well as other Western politicians and media outlets who have exaggerated the strength of riots within Iran to sow discord. This foreign-backed agitation is, of course, nothing new. It's part of a long-standing campaign to bring Iran under the service of Zionism. But in spite of these threats, the Islamic Republic has remained steadfast, seeking to address genuine economic concerns while providing a decisive security response to the rioters. Large crowds have even taken to the streets to rebuke the rioters and to support the Islamic Republic. Indeed, over the past week, the strength of the riots has dissipated, with calm and normalcy beginning to return to the streets, although that hasn't stopped the warmongers in the West from seeking to attack Iran. Laith, I want to bring you in here now. Firstly, thank you very much for joining me again on the show.
Great to be with you, Ammar.
Laith, why is Iran really in the crosshairs of the Zionists? I mean, when we look at Western propaganda, there's been a massive, coordinated spike in news coverage designed to get people riled up. We see talk of women's rights and freedom and democracy, and people displaying just complete ignorance, talking about the Ayatollahs when they have no idea what an Ayatollah even is. This is the same playbook that we've seen many times before. Obviously, we know this isn't about women's rights, freedom and democracy. You'd have to be deeply ignorant to believe that even for a second. So why is the empire really so hell-bent on toppling the Islamic Republic?
Yeah, there's two main reasons. One is that Iran currently is the only state on the planet that is providing material, military support to Palestine, to resistance in all of the Arabic world mainly and Muslim world. So that's number one. Number two, it is currently also the only state that is Muslim that is not either completely under vassalage of the empire, we're talking from Indonesia to Morocco, and or partially occupied, like Lebanon, like Iraq, like Yemen, that are still there is resistance, but it's a contested territory. So this is the reality. There is no, out of those, I don't know how many states are Muslim on this planet, this is the only one left that is not a vassal of the empire ruled from Tel Aviv or Washington, D.C. People can still argue on that thing, but this is the reason. It's nothing else. If Iran gives up on Palestine, on aiding other Muslim and Arabic nations that are resisting, it will be left alone. If it accepts to allow Islam to be colonized by the Zionists, and Wahhabi Islam becomes the voice of Islam as Christianity and Judaism were captured, then it will be left alone.
Laith, I want to briefly discuss the response from the Western left to this assault on Iran. For anyone who doesn't know, you yourself are on the political left, but you obviously have no association with these social imperialists who call themselves leftists in the West. I mean, for the last 2.5 years of genocide in Gaza, these people have been saying free Palestine, and they've been going on marches for Palestine. But when it comes to the most important patron of the Palestinian resistance, which is the Islamic Republic of Iran, many of those very people are supporting the rioters. I mean, that's obviously the result of a combination of various things, like Islamophobia and profound ignorance. We hear many of them consumed by moralistic talking points against Iran. It seems that a lot of them simply don't understand the implications of the Islamic Republic falling, or they're just blatantly chauvinistic.
Well, obviously there is a unlimited list of moralistic fallings of the West as a whole, you see. But we don't see people talking about nuking London or Paris and ending their 600, 800 years of rampage genocide on this planet. Nobody is talking about nuking Washington, D.C. because it's a pedophile den that is raping and trafficking children all around the planet for that pleasure, right? Well, once we hear Americans, Canadians, British people that call themselves leftovers, in my opinion, not left, start calling for nuking their own capitals and lynching their own leaders and burning their own churches and synagogues and rampaging in the hospitals and killing doctors and nurses because they're part of the oppressive state, pedophile state of the United States, then maybe there will be partial reasoning why I would be like, okay, maybe this white leftover can now talk about Iran. But truly, that's not even enough, because it's not enough anymore for me to accept any Westerner talking about any part of the world, not only Iran, until I see them take action against their own state. I'm done with hearing any opinion of somebody from the West if they are not calling for armed struggle against their own genocidal imperialist regimes that have been rampaging across this planet since the beginnings of the Crusades in the last millennium. Okay, it's 900, almost 1,000 years of rampage that started with the Crusades and didn't end till today. Once I see actual people who are citizens of Western states take action, physical action, and format, revolutionary formations that are taking direct military action against their own state, then I will accept them into the circle of acceptance of opinion. At this point, their opinion is worthless to anyone on this planet.
Laith, I want to get your views on the bigger picture here. Obviously, the discourse element that we've been talking about is incredibly important because we're in an information war. But I also want to consider the broader geopolitical relations at play. I mean, some have said that we're in an age of Pax Judaica, replacing an era of Pax Americana that has existed since the end of the Second World War. It does seem that the US is so heavily infiltrated by the Zionists that as a state, it doesn't really have true autonomy and independence anymore, and it's just subservient to the interests of the transnational Zionist movement. I mean, what's your view on that?
Look, I think there's a lot of people have problems, formulating in their mind what is happening right now in terms of Zionism, Jewish supremacy, and white supremacy. Okay, and this is because a lot of these people are reacting to the reality that we are all seeing, but don't have a full historical understanding of the conceptualization of these ideologies or labels. So first off, let's be very clear, there is no such thing as a white people. Okay, I sometimes throw this word out, but whiteness is an identity that is fabricated. Okay, that is, in reality, there is cultures that are based on language, English person, an English nation, an English people that speak English language. French people, let's speak French language. Italian people, let's speak Italian language. There's no such thing as white. But this idea of whiteness was formed in the furnace of colonialism in North America specifically. When the United States was born and trying to shed itself off of the British hold, and merging all the European colonists that are there into a new fabricated identity, the American identity. And this is where the beginnings of what we can consider as whiteness is. You take all these European identities and you mash them together in the experiment of colonialism. And this is because the enemy in this colonial process was the indigenous people who were labeled red. And then you had added to it again, you took hundreds of indigenous nations in what is now North America, Turtle Island, and you have in this furnace made them into red people or Indians. They're not anymore Ojibwe and Cree and Anishinaabe or Inuit. No, they're all Indian. Similarly, that happened to African people that are sub-Saharan African people through the cross-Atlantic slave trade, where they were minced into blackness, which again doesn't exist. There's no such thing as a black peoplehood. Okay. Now, having said that, now we add to that the layer of the experiment of creating Jewish peoplehood, whereas there is no Jewish people. There's Germans that practice Judaism, Russians that practice Judaism. They speak Russian, they speak German, they speak English, they speak French, they eat the French food, the German food, wherever they are, they come from, that's what they eat. and they dance to the same music and read the same literature. So Zionism is an extension of this process of fabricating European identity. Remember, the Zionists are just Jewish Europeans. I don't want to say European Jews, because no, Jewishness comes after their Europeanness. And now, in this experiment of creating hierarchies depending on fabricated identities of whiteness, redness, and blackness, now we've added this layer of, at one point, Anglo and Germanic were the top of this whiteness. Then Latins, like French and Italians and so on, were absorbed into this whiteness, accepted into it. And, through World War II, Jewishness was accepted into it. And now it's on top of Anglo and Germanic whiteness. The hierarchy, the epitome of white supremacy currently is Zionism, is Jewish white supremacy, okay? And why would I say this? Because you look also inside the Zionist colony itself, there's a hierarchy there. Jewish white, Jewish European, then Jewish Russian, then Jewish Arab, then Jewish Ethiopian in these layers. And the top of the hierarchy are those who come from, Anglo-Germanic spaces and or Ukrainian spaces, okay? So is there a Jewish white supremacist empire right now? Is it ruled from Tel Aviv or is it ruled from Washington, D.C.? It doesn't matter because it's the same identity. I know some people want to rally up white right-wing people against Zionism by telling them the Jews are ruling you. They are ruling them. That's true. They are ruling them, but they're ruling them willingly. The secular and Christian white supremacist elite are choosing to allow these Jews to be in the front line, to control this media, to do all of this. Come on, like numbers in themselves. If the white supremacist empires wants to use Judaism, and they're letting them use Judaism openly. I mean, there's the only time now a white supremacist like Tommy Robinson can come out safely is if he has an Israeli flag flying on top of him. How can I, as a anti-imperialist, progressive person, think that I can offer Tommy Robinson and his clique of Anglo white supremacists something better than what the Zionists are offering, which is the right for them to be white supremacists out in the open as long as they fly the flag on top? Can I offer him that? Can I, as a Palestinian or a Muslim in the UK, tell Tommy Robinson, you can go and be a Nazi in the street as long as you fly a Palestinian flag? How would that happen? How would that happen? I know I ranted there a while, but I hope I was clear in my explanation.
No, I don't think that you ranted at all. I think that you gave a very cogent explanation and anthropological context. You outlined how these interests of Jewish supremacism and white supremacism can overlap and coalesce in many instances, although I'd still say that they're distinct. And of course, there's a huge amount of Judeophilia in Western countries, and so they have allowed themselves to be overrun by Zionists, although that wasn't always the case, and I think it's grown exponentially since the end of the Second World War. And these days, rather than allowing themselves, I think that intimidation and blackmail probably have more of a role to play, and of course you were hinting about that at the end of your answer. But in terms of the security doctrines of these Western imperialist states, they have historically had their own security apparatuses, interests, ideologies, their own civil servants. And we have seen them diverge at points with the Zionist regime, even within the heart of imperialism in Britain and the United States. So would you not say that there is a battle there between those Zionist Jews lobbying in pursuit of maximalist strategies that are in line with what the Zionist regime wants versus what policymakers in Western imperialist countries want to pursue, which, is seemingly more moderate, perhaps, by comparison?
Look, the Zionist, Jewish supremacists, specifically part of the Zionist, they know what they're doing. They know that the empire cannot exist currently without the continued occupation of Palestine and control of Western Asia. So it's not that the Zionists are forcing the imperialists to do what they're bidding. It's that actually the imperialists know that they have no choice but to do it. If they want to continue projecting power over much of Asia and Africa, they need to control that crucial geographic location, Palestine. So, master needs you. He cannot survive without you. This is the situation that the Zionists find themselves and take advantage of. If Palestine is liberated, all the Arabic dictatorships that have been vassals of the West for the last 80 years will collapse. This is as simple as it is. And suddenly, all the petrol oil dollars will disappear. The projection of power of bases into East Africa, South Asia, Central Asia that happens from Western Asia disappears. There is no American empire without control of Palestine. That's as simple as it is. So yes, the Zionists know that the empire is in a corner. It needs it as much as it needs the empire, and therefore they'll have a higher say in what's going to happen in the battlefield because they are the front line of the empire.
I definitely hear what you're saying, and I really appreciate your analysis and the way that you have articulated it and justified it. But certainly there are others who take a different view to you and also have very plausible arguments, particularly Professor David Miller. But one thing that you did say right at the end there is that unlike a typical settler colony, which would have no agency of its own, right, no ability to have a say in the empire's decision-making, the Zionist entity does have a say. So I think the point is that even if people don't agree that the Zionists are running the show, then it's at least clear that they're not simply taking instructions from the West. They are involved in the decision-making.
There's a symbiosis. That's the reality. And yes, there's Jewish supremacy, and these Jewish supremacists control much of the media, much of the financial system, much of the new technology, information technology. Those are not to be debated. And us as resisting imperialism in our region, we have to defeat first and foremost Jewish supremacy. Yes, they should be our main target first and foremost. And there should be Western people that are rebelling against Jewish supremacy in their own. And Judaism is currently condemned in my mind because there's not one Jewish person who's willing to risk their life for the honor of their own religion, okay, that they claim is being misrepresented by Zionism. Those are not debatable. But to say that, the vicious white supremacists, bland white supremacists, are unable to control this minority of Jewish supremacists, it's a little bit unbelievable completely. I think there is a symbiosis Yes, Trump, there's pedophile tapes on him, and every American politician, and British politician, and so forth. And yes, the Zionists are Jewish supremacists are manipulating them. But you know what? That guy went into the Epstein Island knowing that he's going to be given children and he's going to be filmed. And he signed on to it as the guarantee in the partnership of the symbiosis.
Well, I think whatever the disagreements that may exist on this question are, you've highlighted one absolutely vital thing, which is that the ultimate priority is to defeat Jewish supremacism. And whether or not one agrees with the analysis that Zionists are in control of the West, I don't think we would disagree with the fact that their influence needs to be dismantled and removed for good. And that should be a campaign that, cuts across different political allegiances. Let's just turn briefly to something else I want to consider, which is hybrid warfare. Now, this is eminently within your area of expertise. You've been reporting on the ground about the Zionist campaign of hybrid warfare in Lebanon, and I would encourage everyone to watch, follow, and contribute to your reporting on Free Palestine TV. We're seeing AI-generated videos, a torrent of articles coming from so-called respected media organizations citing unverified propaganda, economic warfare, and sabotage. When people think about war, they tend to think about bombs, bullets, tanks, but warfare can manifest itself through a variety of means, can't it? So what is hybrid warfare, and how do we see that manifesting against the Islamic Republic of Iran?
Yeah, of course, hybrid warfare means the empire is going to use all the tools simultaneously or not against its enemy. Much of the beginnings of a campaign against the state starts with the economic battle. So we see the manipulation of the national currency, as happened here in Lebanon, as happened in Iran over the last few months. And that led to those demonstrations. We see sanctions, we see blockades, sieges, we see, objections to any developmental projects. So here in Lebanon, there is a huge amount of gas fields in the seas just across from Lebanon in the waters. And it's been 30 years that they know that there is all this gas, and so Lebanon could be a gas producer, exporter, have its own self-sufficiency, and it's not allowed. All these companies sign on to contracts, and they never open. In fact, there was a village that I visited in the south of Lebanon a few months ago that they found oil there in the 1950s, and they're not allowed. So Lebanon could be even an oil producer, but it can't. No company is going to come and dig for you. Not even a Russian or Chinese companies will do it because of how the system works. Okay, so you have the propaganda warfare. We saw the increased amount of content that is being produced that is against a government or people, as we see here in Lebanon, or as we see in Iran. There's all the fake information being piled up with the bots and trolls on the internet. And finally, of course, there is all the intelligence work, sabotage of infrastructure, decapitation, kidnappings, killings, murders, on the slow side. And then, of course, finally, you have the full-scale warfare that would be added at the last stage once the Americans or the Israelis feel comfortable enough with the outcome of their previous warfare.
And we know, of course, that one of the main elements of hybrid warfare is economic strangulation. And first, let's be clear that the vast majority of Iran's economic problems have been caused by US and European sanctions. Iran is, of course, facing some of the most severe economic sanctions in history, targeting its oil exports, banking system, financial transactions, shipping, access to global markets. I mean, you name it, right? But in addition to all of that, the situation hasn't been helped by the economic policies of successive Iranian governments. And when I say governments, I want to be clear that I don't mean the Islamic Republic as a state. Right? The state is one thing and the governments are another, and they are separate. We've seen since at least the time of Rafsanjani increased privatizations, which was accelerated under Khatami and particularly under Ahmadinejad. And in 2016, the leader of Iran's revolution, Ayatollah Khamenei, gave a speech in which he indicated that that had been a strategic error. I mean, he gave a pretty clear warning to the president at the time, Hassan Rouhani, that he needed to create a resistance economy. And Ayatollah Khamenei said that Iran needed to increase domestic production, to avoid reliance on imports, to fight corruption, to give more state support to small and medium-sized enterprises, and so on. But that vision that Ayatollah Khamenei outlined has not really been pursued, it seems. I mean, do you think the Iranian government should perhaps look at other countries that have tried to develop a resistance economy to withstand sanctions and sabotage, like China and Venezuela, for example?
Yeah, look, obviously, any new liberal policies, financial policies in a government, a state resisting imperialism is a suicidal move. But there's two things that we need to remember about Iran. Iran offers free healthcare, free education, free public transportation, subsidized electricity, water, and gasoline and gas and so forth. And much of the food prices are subsidized also in terms of the local agricultural products. So it's hard to imagine the state doing much more than that in a situation of blockade and siege and sanctions, right? And one thing about the upper middle class and upper class of countries that are under siege is that, once their financial holdings start collapsing, they become easier targets for recruitment. Okay, so there is a level of where you have to play. You don't want to lose completely your upper class. Okay, and I'm saying this as a communist, and I'm progressive person. I'm not happy about what I'm saying, but the thing that we forget sometimes with a situation like Iran is that those who claim to be resisting the empire should have been helping breach those sieges and those sanctions. Like, look at what happened in Syria. Syria was the ally of Russia, the largest wheat producer in the world, one of the largest oil and gas producers in the world. Syria's wheat, gas, and oil was captured by the United States and the Kurdish Contras and was being looted and exported to the Zionist colony. People in Syria were getting hungry, had no heating or gasoline or electricity. Russia, which was throwing around wheat, feeding different parts of Africa, throwing around, selling its gas and oil at the cheapest price possible to get it smuggled by India so it can be sold again to Europe and so forth, could have easily fulfilled all the needs of Syria's wheat, gas, and oil during the siege, but it didn't. China today could buy all of Iran's oil and gas, all of it, and cut on its purchases from Saudi or Emirati oil and gas, or Qatari, which are enemies of the Russia and China in general, collaborators, vassals of the West, but it's not doing that. So what I think we need to, whenever we are talking about anti-imperialism in general, it's a global subject. So I cannot look at Iran separately from this global struggle. And those who want to separate the struggles of Venezuela or Syria or Palestine and Iran from China and Russia and every other are missing the point. Our enemy is working on a global scale, has all of the plans fit together. They are making Venezuela's oil outside the market, even though that it's going to take them 20 probably years to build it up to be able to make money from it. Not because they're going to want that oil, but because they don't want the Chinese to have it. They don't mind, by the way, we go back to Israel, the Zionists, the Jewish supremacists, are they forcing the empire to get into a war with Iran? People don't understand this. They're like, oh, well, Saudi and Emirati and all of that oil and gas of the Gulf will be out of the market if there's a war in Western Asia. Well, that's what the Americans want, actually. The Americans would rather to dry up the supply of oil and gas to China's factories, because Russia cannot supplement the Iranian and Arabic oil and gas fast enough if all of the region is up in flames. If the whole Western Asia is up in flames, it means all the trade routes of China will be out of commission, meaning Africa, Europe, and Latin America will be out of the reach of Chinese producers because of this. And then the prices of American products will be competitive and it can compete with China. So you see, it's not the Zionists that want only the United States to attack Iran because they want to end the Islamic Revolution and its support to the Palestinians. It's also the Americans that don't care and actually want to see the Saudi oil fields up in flames, because they have their own supply, the Americans. It's the Chinese that will be suffering.
Just to turn to something else, which I think you would be well placed to talk about, is the question of Syrianization. And what I mean by that is, in the dirty regime change war against Syria, we saw not just the use of Wahhabi, Takfiri terrorist groups that were armed and funded by the United States and by various Persian Gulf countries, but we also saw the use of divide and rule tactics, particularly with the Kurds who have fought a separatist campaign in Syria. It seems to me that this is a big risk factor for Iran, which is obviously a large country geographically with over 90 million people, comprising many different ethnicities. I mean, the majority are the Fars, the Persians, who are about 60% of the population, but you also have Azeris, you have Kurds, you have Baluchis, you have Arabs, you have various Turkic peoples and so on. And in the case of Kurds and Baluchis in particular, there is a history of separatist efforts and even terrorism in Iran. So it's wrong-headed when people only talk about two possible scenarios. One, either the Islamic Republic remains intact, or two, there's a new Western-backed regime under Reza Pahlavi or some other Western stooge. In reality, there could be other devastating scenarios that result in a protracted civil war and, unimaginable chaos and devastation. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, just to be clear before I say anything here, I think the empire is not going to succeed, but the Zionists and the empire, their objective is not just regime change in Iran and or in any Arabic or Muslim state. Their objective is to fragment what exists as national states to smaller parts that will be unsustainable, cannot ever have power to challenge imperial order and or have sovereignty. So Iran will be broken up into regions. This is what they dream about. This is what they want to do in Russia. This is what they don't want to change the regime in China to be subservient to the West. No, they want to break it up in a way that it will never come back together to be able to challenge. That even if there was some revolution, that it will require mass deaths and mass long-term struggle to reformate the state like China and or Russia and or Iran. So, of course, we have the regions that are Arabic, the regions that are Luri, Kurdish, Armenian, Azerbaijani, Tajik, Valush, in what is now Iran, and those will all be separate states. They will make them into ethnic, linguistic enclaves. And if that happens, which will not happen, again, one more time, I would say I don't think they'll be able to do this. Because the last time I think I answered somebody about this, everybody is like, "Oh, you're giving, you're repeating the Zionist plot." I'm not saying that they're going to succeed, but if they do succeed in such a situation, this means that the Persian part of Iran, the heartlands, will be landlocked. That's another thing, and will lose all its gas and oil because that's in the Arabic parts of and Baluchi parts of Iran. Okay, so this is the objective. It's not going to happen, but they will never bring the Shah back. Okay, they will bring multitudes of thugs that will control over these different regions that are beggars for the rest of their life.
I want to now consider the internal security situation in Iran. We know that the Islamic Republic has been able to endure relentless foreign interference from different Western intelligence agencies, including, of course, MI6, CIA, and Mossad. But there are also those who, from a supportive but slightly more critical perspective, have talked about areas of improvement. I've personally seen many loyal observers question whether Iran's internal security apparatus has been adequately vigilant in recent years. We've seen the persistence of infiltrators, domestic saboteurs, and foreign-backed agitators, and that has exposed gaps that have unfortunately allowed these imperialist campaigns to gain momentum and, of course, to result in what we see today. Do you think that the time has come now for some course correction? And do you think that lessons can be learned from not just this current experience, but also the CIA-led anti-hijab riots of 2022 to go after traitors and saboteurs, corrupt officials, maybe even reconsider the position on nuclearization? Because clearly, whatever policies the Iranian government chooses to pursue going forwards after all of this has existential consequences for the future of the Islamic Republic.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the last 35 years, I think everybody should acknowledge that the model of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, quote unquote North Korea, is the most solid of all models for people that are resisting imperialism and colonization. And, there is, of course, different positionality for Korea that allowed them to do this. One being geographically far away from the West and never having a long multi-millennial relationship with the West, let's say like Arabic peoples or Iranian peoples who've had millennia of contact with the West and a identity that is the other. The main other is the Arabs and the Persians from 6,000 years ago till now, and the mixing of culture and contact and how are you going to close up Iran like North Korea closed up completely, no contact with the outside world? That's the only way you can really stop influence of such an empire that has limitless resources to influence your population. So it may have worked. Look at what happened over the last 2 weeks with Iran cutting all the telephones, cell phones, internet, and so on. It had a much easier time to, control the population. without the influence coming from the outside. Can they do that on all the time? I don't know. With thousands of years of direct contact with the West, is a different story. With having millions of diaspora Iranians, it's a little bit hard. How are they going to talk to their families with no WhatsApp or whatever it is, right? This is different for North Korea. So we can't go back in time. And North Korea is a smaller country, much smaller. So it's easier, even if you do cut all communication with the rest of the world and you block the influence of the West. It's a huge country. There's so many borders. There's so many cultures. It's also, how many languages are you going to propagate in? That's the other thing, right? Like North Korea is one culture, one linguistic group. So the state can create propaganda in one language, and that's enough. In Iran, the state has to produce propaganda and the whole resistance, basically, in so many languages. The expenses of fighting this propaganda war is also prohibitive in comparison to North Korea. And in the issue of a nuclear weapon, can it save Iran, a nuclear weapon? Well, look at Pakistan. It has a nuclear weapon. It's still a vassal, right? Will Iran use nuclear weapons first? Does the US have to use a nuclear weapon or Israel to use a nuclear weapon to defeat Iran? Those are. I'm not sure the nuclear weapon would be the deterrent that we expect it to be, especially when you have Armageddonists in the Zionist Jewish supremacist cult that want to bring Armageddon, that are happy to use a nuclear weapon, that will be fine for the whole world to end in a nuclear holocaust because they think they can bring the Messiah back. So there is also, I know we need to provide productive criticism to the Iranian government. And I think the main criticism that I would be given is that Iran should be hitting first and not waiting. It has enough conventional power to do so. Iran also should start occupying countries. I know as an Arabic person, nobody wants to hear an Arab saying Iran should occupy things. I think Iran should occupy Iraq, should extend to Syria, should have done that a long time ago. Iran should land in Yemen. Everybody's occupying everything. The Israelis are going to reach Damascus. And you are saying, I don't want to occupy Iraq because I'm worried about the opinions of people. Opinions of people don't matter anymore in this world that we live. It's either the US occupies these countries or Iran does that, and I would prefer Iran doing them.
Well, I have to say that Iraq wasn't first on my list of countries that Iran ought to occupy, but certainly I'm a proponent of them taking the small fake states like Azerbaijan and Bahrain, which were historically part of Iran, of course, and which are run by Zionists. But for sure, it doesn't make sense to allow enemy vassal states to operate freely on your border and to serve as launch pads for operations against you. In terms of getting a nuclear weapon, I don't think many people would say that it's a silver bullet. Perhaps some people would, but surely it could help in terms of the broader deterrent capacity that a state has. I mean, the former US President Richard Nixon was associated with madman theory, which basically was a purposeful policy of making Nixon seem to be volatile and unstable so that his enemies, principally the Soviet Union at the time, thought that he was unpredictable. And so they should avoid provoking him lest some sort of unforeseen consequence happen. And so if you have a nuclear weapon, And especially if you subscribe to madman theory, then okay, you might never use that weapon, but your enemy can't guarantee that you won't use it, especially if you seem to be unpredictable. And so it's the possibility of what could happen that drives the deterrence. But I should also say that Iran's leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, issued a fatwa, a religious edict many years ago prohibiting nuclear weapons. So obviously we're engaging in a hypothetical conversation about possible future scenarios. In terms of the internet, I do think that in Iran's case, the genie is out of the bottle there. Of course, the DPRK never allowed open internet access. A country like China has a different intranet model, which keeps internet traffic largely contained within the country. It has its own social media sites and messaging apps and so on. But having an open internet really does allow the enemy to take advantage and to sow discord. I mean, we've seen countless examples of that in Cuba in 2021. We saw large anti-government protests, which were basically instigated through propaganda created in Miami, Florida, in the United States, where there's a large Gusano diaspora community. And that propaganda was CIA funded and beamed into Havana. And we see the same thing with Iran, with unhinged elements of the diaspora community working knowingly or unknowingly with Mossad and CIA propagandists to foment violent riots within Iran. And, we've seen with the shutting down of the internet in Iran, how the riots magically started losing steam until calm began returning to the streets. So it's obvious that these foreign agents were using the internet to sow discord in Iran. And clearly measures need to be taken going forward to limit the capacity of internet access to be misused in that way. Laith, just lastly, Donald Trump initially spouted very strong rhetoric about US intervention in Iran. He said that if security forces killed protesters, that the US was locked and loaded to protect them. He quickly climbed down from that position, saying that reported deaths had occurred because of a stampede and crowd control issues, which is obviously him just trying not to back himself into making any red lines. And we've seen constant speculations. Will there be a strike? Will there not be a strike? And Trump has now said that there won't be any strike on Iran. But Trump can say one thing and he can obviously do another. So we can't trust a single word out of his mouth. How do you read this situation? And do you think that Iranians should remain on high alert?
Yeah, I think the Iranians should definitely stay on high alert. Clearly, over the last 2 weeks, the high alertness has deterred the Americans. It seems that Americans were trying to probe the new air defense systems and layout of those air defense systems that the Iranians have had, and were unable to find a weak point that's not going to cost them a lot of loss of men and equipment in this attack. So Iran should be on the highest alert still. The Zionists and the Americans have no choice, actually, but to start this war. Let's be very clear. This is the day that there's stopping of war in the region. It will be the beginnings of internal reckoning in the Zionist colony and in the United States, and therefore they have a vested interest in continuing war. And if they don't attack Iran right now, then the United States, specifically Trump, seems to have some backup plans like attacking Greenland, maybe Canada, So at least Trump has a way to distract his populace of internal affairs by showing them constant wins of loot from other places. Netanyahu, on the other hand, if he is unable to trigger a war right now with Iran, he will trigger a war with Lebanon. So I think there's a certainty of coming war in the region. The question is, will it be Iran and or Lebanon first? And the tensions are the highest. One thing I would say when we were talking about nukes, I think Iran may have nukes, by the way. There was a lot of analysts from 20 years ago, even from 30 years ago, that talked about Syria and Iran purchasing nuclear warheads from the collapsing Soviet Union stockpile. Of course, those nuclear warheads would be at the end of their life term right now, because it's around 25 years, the life term of a nuclear head. Iran may have engineered their own because of the collaboration program that was between North Korea, Syria, and Iran on their development of their nuclear reactors, their ballistic missiles, and their probably nuclear heads. All of this could be done, and we don't know about it. Okay, there's not 100% proof of these things, but those rumors have always existed. And having said that, I go back to, if there's a war and Iran actually bombs the oil and gas fields of the Arabian Peninsula, I think the Iranian forces should land in the Emirates, in Qatar, in Bahrain, in Saudi, in Kuwait, once they bomb those places, and just take them. There shouldn't anymore exist fake countries like Qatar, Bahrain, and the Emirates. And their resources shouldn't be allowed to be in the hands of the Americans and the West and the Zionists that have spent the profits of these resources over the last 80 years in the dispossession and genocide of Arab and Muslim peoples in the region.
Well, thank you very much for that, Laith. I know it's very hard to make any decisive predictions about what's going to happen, but I think that what you've outlined is certainly plausible and based on what we can observe materially happening on the ground. And we should all be on high alert, frankly, not just Iranians. Everyone around the world should be doing their part to defeat Jewish supremacism and to land blows against the empire and to stop this aggression against the Islamic Republic of Iran. But Laith, thank you very much for joining me again. It was a pleasure to host you on the show.
Thank you very much, Ammar. See you soon.
And thanks to all of our listeners and viewers. If you enjoyed this content, please make sure to like this video and to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Help us to overcome the algorithmic suppression that we're facing, and we'll see you on the next one.